Hello, everyone. This is Cece, and we are on another episode of Raw Honey. And I'm really excited to be in this new season talking with some different couples that I have in my life and that I've known for a long time and definitely look up to in different ways. And just I'm excited to know their story and their take on different elements of their relationship. So this is Kathleen and Caleb, and they are family members of mine. And they are a little bit older than me, but and definitely a little wiser. They've been married probably what, 2 years, two and a half? No,
Almost 2 years.
almost two
Yeah.
years. Okay, so they have been married for 2 years and probably dating longer than that. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, they have a lot. They have a lot to share about relationships. And so I sent them a couple questions, and the first one that they wanted to answer was, what is one time or a time that you felt most appreciated by me? And so you guys can just introduce yourselves again if you want to, and then go into that question whenever you're ready.
All right. Caleb, you want to start?
Would you like me to start? I can start. Hi, this is Caleb. Yeah, the time that really came up for both of us was just the last year. We got married in Kalamazoo, Michigan, that area, and we lived there for a few months. We actually then moved to Milwaukee in the middle of the pandemic. It was a lot of big transitions at once. We got married, we moved into our first apartment, and I got into grad school. I was in grad school, I guess, shortly after we were married. So we kind of knew we were leaving, but it happened pretty quickly, as those things do.
Yeah.
So we took off from Milwaukee. I actually got let go from the dead-end job that I was working, so I was unemployed for, I don't know, the better part of 2 months.
Yeah,
before
so we got
moved.
married, and then 6 months later, Caleb was let go. So
As we were getting
Wow.
ready.
we're trying to save money to move out of state.
Wow, it's intense.
So it was like a lot at once to try and navigate, and it was really difficult.
And then with COVID thrown in on top of everything else, just kind of moving to a new place where we didn't know anyone. Nothing was open.
So we spent a lot of time together. So we grew really closer than we thought we were close before, but we grew much closer because we became each other's like close friends. We were already each other's like romantic partners. We didn't see any family for most of 2020. We spent all of our holidays alone together. So it was just a really intense way to transition from being like newlyweds to here's a hot potato from the universe. Catch it.
It was really intense, and it was also like, it's been super, super rewarding, I think. Because we have had to, it's not always what you want to do, spend every moment with the same person. But we've found ways to make it work, and we found a lot of joy and happiness in spending time together and in finding routines that are new and different, and ways to make life here interesting.
Yeah. So was that more of so what's the appreciation element of that? Is it just being able to get through it together? Like, is there more specific, or is that more of the resiliency piece what you guys just talked about?
I think we learned to appreciate each other's strengths during that time more so than we would have had we not been in a new state during a pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
And to be able to like remain largely like content and enjoy that person's company, I think was, at the end of most days, like we weren't going to bed angry and irritated with each other. We were going to bed like, I'm really happy I have you. I'm really happy I have you too. So
yeah, that's definitely That's definitely really impressive. And I'm glad that stressful transitions, you guys were able to come together through those, because that is not always the way it works out. Do you think that there were like bumpy periods within that, or
Oh,
was it
yeah, absolutely.
Oh
okay?
yeah. So we signed a lease in Wisconsin literally like 10 days before the World Health Organization like called it a global pandemic and everything truly shut down. And we had signed a lease for an apartment that we thought would be somewhere we were just at when we weren't working. We were assuming that we would be working outside of it. So we signed a lease for like a 700 square foot apartment, and we both ended up working out of that apartment. So thankfully it was 2 bedrooms, but
Also,
there
there's
are
only two
definitely
bedrooms.
some things we would have done differently had we known when we were apartment shopping what was coming.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say an adjustment for sure was just the sheer lack of living space that we had, and like the shelter at home was not as intense in Wisconsin as it was in Michigan by the time we moved in May, but nothing was really open. So we were home all the time. And
this wore on Kathleen particularly
yeah,
at times.
it was harder for me than it was for Caleb.
Kathleen's a great nester, like in her space, and does a really incredible job making a place feel homey and put together. And that can be kind of challenging in a place that's that small when you're
always there,
you're on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Part of her process is, she likes to rearrange things, which it kind of happens just at a constant pace, kind of just an underlying current of things kind of moving around and getting rearranged. Most fine.
Just adjusting,
but I can certainly
figuring out what the space is trying to tell us.
I could certainly tell when there was like frustration mounting, as like she would just kind of like buzz around the house with things. Where does this go? Where can I put it? I want this somewhere else.
Need more shelves.
Plates are slamming into the walls, just
Yep.
decorating. That is really interesting. The way that it's just interesting to hear how you guys describe each other in such detail. I mean, you obviously have had plenty of time to observe.
Yes, I would say that's true over the last while.
We have probably expedited, like, I would say the normal amount of time that a married couple would take to get to know each other really well. We're probably acting more like a couple that's been married for 5 years because of the sheer amount of time that we spent together in the last like 16 months.
We also
mostly time alone.
We dated for what, 4.5 years?
Yeah, we dated for a good amount of time.
Nearly 5. 4.5, 5 years.
Wow. I didn't know it was that long.
20.
Yeah, I didn't think he was ever going to ask, Cece.
What was that?
I didn't think he was ever going to ask.
Oh my gosh. I did not remember it being that long. So then did you guys start dating when you were like, what, like 24? I'm trying to think of how old I was.
So I was 24.
Okay.
And Caleb just turned 25.
Okay. I was like.
We got married. I think we dated for more like 3.5, 4 years, but it felt like enough time for sure. It didn't take us too terribly long to figure out that we were both pretty serious about each other, but we didn't exactly, neither of us was in like a huge rush to get married, which helped relieve like pressure.
Okay.
But really, after like 3 years, you're like celebrating your 3rd dating anniversary and you're like, okay, so how many more of these are we gonna have?
And did you guys have conversations about getting married, or was it you did a lot, or when did those start becoming pretty frequent?
We had conversations, I mean, I guess pretty early in our relationship, where we had talked about marriage and about kind of how we felt about it, and honestly for me, under what conditions I would be interested in marriage as like an institution generally. And we talked. I was like, this is not going to be me.
Oh, okay.
Hiding that we're going to get married, and then all of a sudden it happens. Like, we're going to
talk
Like,
about it.
Yeah.
we're gonna know, like we're gonna have a plan because this is way too big of an event just to sort of
pop a ring and
fall into
get married.
kind of haphazardly.
So did you guys not necessarily or have a negative opinion about marriage before?
I think that Caleb had some really like eye-opening like thoughts on marriage as an institution.
Yeah.
That I did not consider until I met him, because he essentially looked at it as a legal situation and not a religious covenant. So we had a lot of discussions about like what is the point of marriage versus long term. I forget the term for it, but so we had a lot of discussions, and ultimately like we both felt like as much as like our relationship would feel just as sacred whether we were married or not, but for the sake of the society that we live in, it would really simplify a lot of things.
And I do think it is like a really powerful statement about commitment too, to have a wedding and to say we're married and like this is, you know, this permanent thing that we've entered, and like there is something to it for sure.
I would agree with that. It feels different when you have like assembled or I guess requested to gather your very dearest like humans and ask them to like bear witness to these like promises that you're making to each other. That makes it just feel a little bit more special. And also, I don't want to say like it makes the not obligation, but it makes it just feel like really really real.
Yeah, I think and there's a really great episode. I think that Brene Brown talks about it, and it definitely made me more confident in planning my own wedding, because I had a lot of anxiety about that before Hank and I made it official, because of just a lot of religious pressures and different. And I've always had a really hard time with traditions, because I feel like they make things mandatory, and they make things like shame oriented, and I mean that's just the way that they have made me feel. I don't know if that's their intention, but I just really was like, I want to make everything sorry, my roommate just walked in my room. I want to make everything intentional when I'm planning this, and maybe there's a traditional element that I love because I love it, or maybe it's not like that. And it's just
you decide that though.
Yeah, just I want to decide this, and I've made a lot of decisions like that because my religious beliefs have changed a lot, and I think people would maybe be surprised that I still wanted to have my wedding at the West Point Chapel, and I was like, I love that place, and I've had a lot of history with it. Whether or not I went to every service every Sunday there, like I didn't, but like I love that chapel though,
Sure.
And
it's important, like that's you being intentional about a location that's important to you,
exactly,
meaningful to you, and you're starting the next chapter of your life, and you get to choose the tone that you set for it, and you get to choose the people who are going to be there.
So. Yeah, just intentionality, and I think that was a lot of my drawbacks with marriage too. When I first was just wrestling with the idea in college, just in general, with the military lifestyle, and just trying to understand traditions. I've always been really interested in breaking down like why people just go along with things and not really think them through. And marriage is one of the things that I thought about. And so definitely with Hank and I really care that like every single day we get married again. We ask each other to get married again, and we make it a daily thing, because I'm just like, I don't want to hear, oh, well, we have to do this now because we're married. It's like, no, I want to, I want to do it because I love you. To do this now. Yeah. We don't do anything because we have something hanging over our head. Like, that's just not why I want to do stuff.
You're choosing each other every day.
And your wedding can be a really powerful way to set that tone by making the kind of decisions you're talking about. really intentional about even just the kind of ceremony you want to have and how you want it structured and how you want it to come across it can be a really powerful thing.
Yeah, exactly. And Brene Brown has a really good episode on that. I can't remember and it was actually talking about her wedding. It was like a episode with some author that talks about like intentional gatherings. And just talking about how intentional gatherings like leave memories in people for such a long time, even if you don't know those people going into it. And there's a whole strategy to it, but Brene was just talking about her wedding and how the memories that came from it were really special. And yeah, it was really cool. And it definitely made me feel more confident going into my own planning process. Yeah, but not to keep talking about me.
No, we're enjoying it. The wedding planning process is so unique for everyone, and I think almost everyone has been to a wedding where you feel like you could substitute any bride and groom, and it could be duplicated. So when you get a chance to go to a wedding that feels intentional and thoughtful, it does leave a mark on you. So
yeah,
proud of you
exactly.
for doing that.
Yeah, it's been a process. I mean, there's been tough conversations for sure about it with my family, and at the end of the day we all come together and we all get on board, and there is some negotiating, and I have to balance between like it being my day and my family thinking that certain elements are going to make things more efficient. And so I've been learning how to balance those things, because I'm like, no, I'm going to choose everything. And then I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. I'm like, yeah, okay,
there was
fine.
A lot of conversations that we had as well with family that
yeah, I know,
weren't easy, but ultimately they were the right conversations, because we never have looked back and thought that we had regrets about the way that we proceeded with.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another, I don't think Brene says it, but it's another sort of author. Do you guys know Glennon Doyle, Melton Doyle?
Yeah, we love Glennon.
Yeah. Like Lucy and I's like favorite quote that she says is disappoint everyone before you disappoint yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's like cornerstone really to this process for me. I mean, and I try not to be a bulldozer about it, but I definitely am not okay with putting myself at the end of the line with these decisions.
Like, I realized really quickly that you can't make everyone happy.
Yeah.
And you can try really hard to make everyone happy, and there will still be people who are not happy with the decisions that you've made.
The momentum of that day, and the expectations that typically surround that day, and just kind of the typical patterns for your family and your community and however things usually go, like that, talk about steamroll. That will steamroll you if you let it, if you just kind of sit back and watch it happen, it will happen, and it will be it'll be something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you definitely, I try to be really intentional and aware of things that I want to do to celebrate Hank and I's, and things Hank and I both want to do to celebrate our relationship. And we try to do that in our everyday lives with all of our decisions.
Yeah, you absolutely should. I look back, like, our wedding was such a fun day. It was so good.
Yeah.
It was so nice. Like, it was like, I don't know, perfect.
So something that we did that really shocked particularly my parents was that morning did just the two of us. We did a yoga class that was led by one of our really good friends who happens to own a yoga studio. So it was like an incredible high quality yoga class.
Yeah, of course.
So it was just the two of us, and he had designed it to like help connect us to each other, to like set the tone for that day. And then we went for a walk by Lake Michigan, which is really close to where we got married. And then we went to breakfast together. So it was like 11:30 in the morning, I think, by the time we like finally said goodbye to each other. And like spending that time with Caleb that morning
was great.
Was really like centering for me in particular, because there's a lot of expectations of things that the bride will do more so than the groom.
That's true.
And I needed to be reminded of like why I was going through some of those really difficult things. Was for Caleb at the end of the day. And yeah, I just found it to be like an incredibly valuable like opportunity to spend that much quality time with him that on the wedding day morning. So
yeah, that's really cool. I have not thought about that because our wedding is, I think it's at 10 a.m. our ceremony. So I'm an early riser, but Hank is definitely not. And
he might be like getting into it at 9:30.
Maybe the day before.
Yeah, maybe the morning before. Like if it's lunch before your
yes, that would be something else. That would be really funny. But I do want to think about that because I know, knowing me, I'm definitely gonna want to wake up really early and be super, do a lot of mental health things to clear my head and just bring a really positive energy and not feel like I'm being put on the spot and like judged and everything that you feel when you're doing things a little differently.
Yeah, just as a bride in general, like everyone is watching you, and I don't like being the center of attention. So I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I get that.
Breaths. Deep breaths, like whatever. Everyone that's going to be watching you is someone that you love very deeply, and you asked them to be here. So
yeah, exactly.
I think it was really important for us to find at least that time at the beginning of the day was awesome, and then during our wedding, or after, I guess the wedding itself was pretty quick. And then after the wedding, though, we had our own little table during our during dinner. We ate together instead of like at a and it was really large nice table with like we didn't have bridal parties, but we were only there for I don't know 30-40 minutes tops. And people were around and of course came up and talked to us, but it was nice just to have some, like just a few moments scheduled of separation. One-on-one time, like during the wedding itself. Like, hi, how are you?
Yeah, that's really cool. I would like to, I think that I want to look into the details once we get all the big things planned and start to put some more of that intentionality and spaces for Hank and I to just center and come back to each other. Yeah, because I don't want to feel, I think that I can feel some of that pressure of like, this needs to be fun, this needs to be entertaining, and all of these, like, it needs to be a party. And I'm like, that's kind of why we made it brunch, the reception, a brunch time frame.
Yeah.
Because we both like just want it to be a really present gathering where we're just taking a good amount of time to just like be grateful for each other and our families, like, and we really want that to be the focus.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I've been to a few weddings where I'm like not sure if it's a wedding or a reunion, but either way it's a good time. It's a good time, but I feel the purpose of the gathering gets a little muddled if you let it. So
yeah, exactly. So we're definitely not to planning all the details yet right now. It's just the big stuff, but it's definitely at the forefront of my mind. It's just being intentional and just making sure things are what we really want and what's gonna keep sort of our focus, our theme of the gathering, and not just what does everyone else want? Like, they're coming so far, I need to do this and this for them. Like, I'm like, I mean, they don't, like no one has to come at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They
That
don't
is
want to.
important. Like, it's an invitation. You can accept it or decline it. That
Yeah,
is
exactly.
well within your choice of options.
I know.
Yeah.
So you opened your introduction with like a quick insult, a quick jab at us at being old.
Did I really?
You said we're
Caleb
old.
is just sensitive because he's now
I'm over
30,
Over.
and so
It's okay. Hank's 31.
when I say the O word, he's like, "What do you mean old? I'm so cool. Watch me wear this baseball bat."
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Well, it bothers me that I can't remember you guys dating that long. It makes me feel like there were points in my life where I just like blurred out relationships, and I'm like, what?
You were in undergrad for almost the entire time.
Oh, okay. Okay, that makes sense.
And then you really probably only met Caleb like one or two times. I think the most time you would have spent with him and I together was for another one of our family members' weddings.
Yeah.
So really didn't ever spend a ton of time with us as a couple because of the size of our extended family.
That's true.
It's difficult.
That's true.
When we all get together to try and really have like a long conversation with anyone. So
yeah, I think that I think that this podcast is really helping me with all of that though, because it's like you sort of know everyone, but at the same time you don't know anyone in our type of family. And you sort of cling on to the fact that you know them a little bit, and it creates this like person that person is going to be their whole life, and they can't ever get out of that mold. And it's like I really just want to take this time to like get to know everyone. Honestly.
It's like almost like Mission Impossible.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. It's cool you get to do this and connect with someone.
Yeah, I've really actually, Cece, I've enjoyed as an adult now getting to know my cousins like more on a one-on-one basis, because when we were kids there was just like a group of us and they were like, just move the kids from here to there, and we were just the kids, and
exactly.
there was this like assumptions like you know you and everyone's fine because you're kids. And now that we're all adults, it's kind of been really fun, I think, to get to know everybody and be like, oh yeah, obviously you have changed since age 10. When was the last time I had a lot of time with you?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like you're so close but so far. And so how do you create that those intentional relationships?
Yeah.
And it's been really cool to do it through this medium. It's funny because I don't know if I'm ever going to get like not interview family members, because I'm so interested in interviewing family members, because I cannot believe how different their perspectives are when they speak about it in this space. And I'm like, I feel like I'm literally meeting you for the first time. And it's crazy. What?
It's almost like you are.
I know, but it's also really, it helps me just, it kind of rewires that memory for me of what I thought before, and it just brings it into focus in this really personal way where I'm like just going back in time with these family members and like understanding and sort of retroactively supporting them through that period. Because a lot of the time we've talked about resilience, and like hearing my mom, my sisters talk about things they went through, and knowing I was there, but I wasn't, not in the way that I wish I could have been. And it's just like this retroactive support that I think is like really healing for all of us.
For sure. Yeah. It's easy to miss. I think that I could do that the same thing with my mom and my sister, reflect on like periods where I was really busy, whether it was with school or with work, and therefore essentially emotionally or physically absent for them.
Yeah.
But I think it's also important not to give yourself too much guilt over that. because, you don't always have, you don't know, hindsight's always 2020. So you can always look back and be like, oh, I wish I had been more supportive to you during that time. But, maybe it was all you could do to get through what you had to do during that time also.
Oh yeah. And I know that. I know that I was doing the best I could and I didn't have the tools I have now, but I think it sort of patches, it sort of heals, like it just heals things. Like I don't know how to explain it. And I wouldn't say the apology that I'm giving them is like the traditional apology of like, I just hurt you and now I'm apologizing. It's different, but it just does something really special. I don't know, it almost kind of prevents some bickering. I feel like I've noticed with my family. It's prevented some previous behaviors from coming out when we are just take the time to like just apologize to each other and yeah, reflect on the fact that we could have supported each other better at different times.
We love it.
I do too.
Big fans of Napoleon or Dan
Also,
Pride.
Yeah, and coming out of a heated scenario with like calm and
well, after the heat.
So, for anybody who doesn't know, Cece and I, our moms are sisters. So,
yes.
There's a special type of heat that comes from them that requires a special.
It's about the temperature of the sun, so.
Yeah. But, alas, there is always forgiveness and
yes.
apologies, and
exactly.
Everyone is capable of growth and change, including moms.
Yeah. That's definitely been to see how my mom has like been better and better at apologizing for different things. Like it just shows you how powerful apologies are, where like one apology can actually heal decades worth of things unsaid and tempers that were reached points that weren't okay. Like it really can heal so much to just tell someone like you're sorry, like honestly.
Yeah,
it can open that process. It can start the healing. At least it can
give
permission to begin to heal where they might have been holding on to resentment or bitterness or sometimes even still anger. Who knows, something deeper than let on.
Yeah, exactly. It just, and I'm probably going to do an intro or maybe do another episode on it because Hank we had this amazing conversation this morning and it was early and we were having to, it was just really early and we were having to go somewhere and he was stressing out about this project he has and he started off by like, he had already said it before, but he started off in this conversation again with like me being involved in this project not getting done, basically. Like somehow that having to do with me. And I was just like, are we really gonna bring it back to me? I'm like, are we really coming back to that right now? I was like, because I'm really not in the mood to like hear that right now. And he just went into this apology and like process that was so sweet and honest, and like the way he communicated with me was just really, really impressive and kind. And I was like, wow, we have come up, like, I'm so proud of where we've come because he's able to communicate like his stress and we're growing from it. We're understanding each other's emotions and we're like coming together and supporting each other. And it was just really special. And I was going to do like a whole thing on it this morning, but I thought maybe I would tell you guys about it since we're talking about apologies.
It's super important. And one of the questions that you had sent to us that we both really liked was, oh gosh, now I can't find it on the list, but something that Caleb is really good at is communicating. And he does a good job of communicating like emotions,
Mhm.
preferences. Like we have really good conversations, like consistently, like, and something that you've worked on, I think, is
I would say I wouldn't say I'm really good at it. I would say
you're
I
not good at
used to be
processing
really
emotions
poor at it.
live time, but you are good at coming back and telling me
That's the work I have to do. Yeah, the work I have to do is historically feel something I'd want to bottle it up and just hang on to it forever. So that's what I have to avoid.
Now you do a really good job of saying, hey, I need some time.
Sometimes
I'm gonna get back to you.
Yeah. You walk away with this for a little bit and come back when I can then address it or spill, actually let you know what I'm thinking, what I'm emoting, and instead of getting upset.
Doing
and just
that in a really
and
kind and thoughtful way, like Cece was talking about with Hank, is important. Because if you have someone that's reactive,
totally,
then you just get in a fight.
Yep.
And
I can,
you could have ended your conversation in two ways.
Yep.
The way that you ended it was really good, and it would have been really unfortunate to end your time together if he had just laid the blame on you and kind of left it at that.
And where I can tell, the times I can tell that we've gotten better at that are actually in the times where it breaks down. Like I've had some stressful weeks with grad school, over the last couple months, just projects and ordinary grad school stuff, but it's hard sometimes. And when that happens, I notice, oh, hey, my tolerance meter for not able to do this as well because of this external stress. But then if I think, okay, like this is an unusually hard time, give myself a little grace and also, learn from this and realize how far we've come in being able to, typically and normally respond to a situation like that. It is.
Yeah, I used to be someone who was like, no, I demand a response now. Thank you. And if you don't give it to me, I will be combative with you, which is a family trait, I think, to demand an answer and then also not be able to have a little fight about it.
Yeah, I need to work. I definitely process my emotions and my needs and I communicate them. I can do that really fast. And that is not something Hank has been able to do as fast as me. And so I also am like I'm ready now. Let's talk about it now.
I'm ready to talk right now. I was ready to talk 20 minutes ago before I finished feeling what I'm feeling now, which is different.
Kathleen is extremely fast. I mean, just a sharp.
If we wait 2 hours, I might be irritated about something different, and
I know, and that's probably where journaling and therapy has been really helpful for me because Hank just doesn't have the same not tolerance, but I would say endurance to reflect like that about emotions and needs and processes, especially if he's tired or something, those conversations can be a lot more draining on him because they make him think about things that aren't inherently, just natural for him to do. And so I definitely have had to learn to get some closure on my own. And we always come back to I do not just not talk about things and we'll come back to it for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that patience and that ability to come back to it because he needs the space to process is something that I may need to work on.
You do have to come back to it because if you don't, then it just lives in the background until it blows up again.
Oh, for sure.
More, in a worse, more explosive, more, more detrimental fashion the second time and the third time.
Yeah,
so
of course.
There have to be some, you do have to get around to it and solve it at some point, or at least come to an agreement about what you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. I don't forget about things that, and there's been times that we've had that he's just been okay with like we've talked about it, but it was about to go to sleep or we were texting or something. And he's like, and the next morning I'm like, hey, like, are you ready to talk about this? And he's like, oh, I thought we were good. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I don't, and even if it wasn't something that was really like a hurtful thing for me, I'm like, our relationship and like you deserve to have a conversation about this because this was a really it was a really difficult thing and feeling that you had, and like you deserve for us to talk about it. So part of it, it's almost like I feel like it's almost like a guy. It tends to guys not having a lot of opportunities in their societal, norms to talk through things like this. And they just think they need to just like get over it. And and I'm like, no, you don't have to get over it. Like, I'm your partner. I really care about how you feel.
I mean, masculinity essentially demands that you
Yeah.
be able to carry things and to bottle them up.
Yeah.
And it's so unhealthy. It really is. Like, it can hurt your relationships. It can hurt you. It can hurt your ability to deal with stressful situations.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not a good thing to do. So I'm glad it sounds like he's dealing with that.
Yeah.
Well, so it's good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's because I don't really leave him much opportunity to not deal with it.
You're like, no, you're not getting off the hook this time or the next 10 times after this.
Yeah, we don't have like blow up fights at all. Like, that's not, if anything, I don't have the emotion of anger is something that's probably way too suppressed in me because of just growing up with people that had tempers and stuff. Like, I kind of went in the opposite direction. But luckily we don't have issue like any kind of scary, angry fights or anything, but I still really care about like talking through things and making sure we communicate things that hurt our feelings and communicate boundaries and compromise moving forward and stuff. Like, that's the most important thing to me.
Yeah, that's crucial. You have to be able to do that. I mean, you have to be able to get meta with it and reflect and talk about the why and the and the root causes of what's happening, rather than just the situation that sparked the argument or sparked the discussion. You got to be able to get beyond that.
Were you saying something, Kat?
No, I was actually just thinking, like, most of the time, if like Caleb and I are arguing about something, it's something really stupid, and the actual argument has to be sussed out. Like,
yeah,
like I could be mad because he didn't cook my meat enough, which is a conversation that we have all the time. So that is not a good example because that's a regular argument that we can get into. But I could be frustrated that he did or didn't do something or did something a certain way, and really that's not what I'm frustrated at all with him for, but that's what I choose to like bring up, and then usually we get to like the meat and potatoes of why we're actually having a conversation.
Yeah,
but it for us is often something really stupid and petty that then leads into like,
why are we
here we go.
Why are we arguing about these shrimp?
Yeah.
This is really absurd.
It's usually meat. It's usually chicken. It's chicken or like red meat. Ugh.
That is
he
so
just firmly
funny.
believes that meat should be essentially undercooked, and I have a lot of issues with that. So, that's neither here nor there.
But it's such a, like, I feel like to communication, curiosity, just that is relationships, that is like marriage, it's partnership, it's really what it's all about, and it creates love, it creates trust, it creates support, just empathy, everything. And I feel like we all talk about this in the way that we're talking about it is in a way like everyone does that, but it's really seems to be like people's last resort. like, well, I guess I'll like, we'll try to have a conversation about each other's feelings. Like, I guess I'll hear you out this one time. And it's like, that's everything. That's everything, you know?
I think for a lot of people, it is difficult to get to the point where they're like, I need to have a conversation about this, because they just have developed over time habits and patterns and other means of conveying some sort of emotion besides communicating it verbally.
Yeah. And some of us live in our heads more than others, and will, start that conversation. Like I do this, sometimes I'll start that conversation in my head and think, oh boy, I really got to address this with Kathleen. I got to talk about this. This is the thing I want to talk about. And then I'll run through my part in my head, and then I'll play her answer, what I think her answer would be in my head.
I never do this.
I respond and back and forth, and I, go in circles and think, oh, well, what if she actually said that instead? And, eventually get nowhere, and then totally forget about the topic and think, oh, why didn't I bring that up when it actually comes up in real life? So
yeah,
yet another thing to continue on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I just want to know the point when it stopped, when like relationships stopped being about communication and about building, like being a vulnerable in this vulnerable partnership. Like, when did they stop becoming about that? Like, it just hurts my heart. And I mean, obviously I've only been, it's not like I have been married yet or for a long time or anything. But I don't know. It feels like I think everyone thinks their relationship is really good though, most of the time. But I don't know. It just feels like, regardless of if I've been in it for a long time, like we've been through some really hard stuff with deployments and military stuff, like, and we've just thrived like through every stressful situation, the love and the trust and the conversations and the vulnerability. Like, I'm like, I just feel like we are really communicating and learning how to communicate in a way that like makes me just really happy in this relationship. So, you know what I mean? Like that's all I can stand on, but it's pretty strong.
Well, you threw out a word earlier that I love, which is resilient, and that is like, I think exactly what you're describing.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you're in difficult situations, either you develop, you become resilient, or you become like bitter and angry and whatever else.
Resilient and adaptive. I mean, you have to change and adapt.
Right, totally. I'm not saying resilient that you just grin it and bear it, but you resilient that like tough things happen, and you learn how to deal with them. You learn how to get through it. You don't let that doesn't crush you or break your relationship. So
yeah, but I think it's not just like a toss of a coin. It's really these tools and this reflection, and it's work. Yeah, it's work. It's definitely swallowing your pride. I think apologizing is at a huge piece of that. But I think we're just about at the cap of our time. I usually keep my podcast about 55 minutes or so. So thank you guys so much for being on. And we learned so much in this podcast today about you. Like I said, it's definitely more of a conversation by the end, but the questions kind of bring us into that conversation. And I think it helps people feel a little more guided and not just like, tell me about your relationship. Like that's kind of start from the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you for asking us to be on. It was a pleasure to chat with you and to continue to get to know you as an adult and not a 10-year-old at the pool. We are wishing you and Hank nothing but the best as you guys continue to plan your wedding, but also just your future together. And remember that a wedding is a day. One day. It's an important day, but it is one day. So the work that you guys are doing now is awesome, and it's important, and you're setting yourselves up for the right foundation for a healthy marriage. And that's the most important part. So
Yes. Thank you guys so much. And we will talk to our raw honey guest next week.